The More of Us podcast features real, uncut conversations about life, pastoral ministry, and walking with Jesus. All guests are pastors in the Charis Fellowship, bound by our common commitment to biblical truth, relationship, and mission. We trust as you hear more of us, you'll see Christ among us. Well, I am here with Trent Lambert from Grace Seminary and Dustin Godshall, who is at Thrive Church in York, Pennsylvania. Dustin's been there 8 years. His wife, Kelly, 3 kids, are active in that church ministry. He's also served in Powell, Ohio. He went to Grace College. He is a good man, and we are glad to have him on the More of Us podcast today. Hello, Dustin.
Hey, how you doing, Tim? Great to be on with you guys.
Yeah, it's good to have you here too.
Dustin, this is Trent Lambert. So glad to have you on the podcast today. And as always, I enjoy being of Tim, and so love Tim's ministry and his heart for Jesus and for pastors. And so look forward to the time today, Dustin.
We're going to ask you a couple questions about your life, your ministry, and walking with Jesus, and we go through those different areas. And so Trent's going to ask you just a couple questions about your family and your life right now.
Dustin, behind all of us as pastors, Tim and I were talking before the podcast today of a transition of life, of our identities and what's important to us. And why don't you just tell us a little bit of a snapshot of your family?
Sure, yeah. I married my wife, Kelly. We did 4 years out of Grace College. We got married 2 weeks after graduation. Kelly always promised or said she was not going to marry a pastor. She is a pastor's kid. My father-in-law is at the church in Myersdale, Pennsylvania. So she wanted to have a real life with somebody who has time off on the weekends and makes good money. So kind of joke was on her, I guess. But yeah, we got married 2 weeks after graduation. We've been married for 21 years now. Our oldest, Ethan, is turning 19 in just 2 weeks. He's currently doing gap year, and he's working at Starbucks, roasting plants. So all you guys on the podcast can drink lots of Starbucks. That will definitely help my son's job security as he's helping roast 3 million pounds of coffee a week at the location. My daughter, Ava, is loving soccer, 16 years old. She works hard at school and just crazy impressive. You know, we see our kids and how talented they are. My youngest, Auburn's 13. She has the biggest heart in the world for animals, and even started a program at the local SPCA where elementary kids come in to read to the dogs that are at the SPCA to improve the kids' reading skills and to also help calm the dogs. And so she heard that you have to be over 18 to volunteer, and she wanted to find a way that kids could help make a difference. And just fun to see all my kids just kind of taking on their own personality and becoming who God made them to be.
Dustin, this next question, I think you've probably answered some of it, but I'm always interested in this question because I think sometimes as pastoral and ministry leaders, we get so busy, we forget this and the importance behind it. I'm a hunter by, I don't know how I was raised and my interests, and a congregant asked me once, "So Pastor, do you really hunt?" And I said, "Well, not really. I'm just a hunter that preaches once in a while." So what are some of your hobbies? What do you like to do?
Oh, I think we are kindred spirits. My 2 hobbies are motorcycles and whitetail. So I thoroughly enjoy getting out on a bike and the freedom it brings. And on a day off, I enjoy hitting some open road and being able to listen to whether it's a John MacArthur sermon or a podcast or an audiobook, and just kind of winding around looking for new roads I haven't found yet here in York County is a highlight. But also just growing up Western Pennsylvania, whitetail is my absolute favorite thing to chase and to be in the woods and start to finish from the field to the table. That whole process is one of my favorite things.
I think our More of Us broadcast today, Tim, has just taken a turn, and now this is the Real Tree edition. I got to ask you, bow hunter, gun hunter, what do you like?
I will say gun hunt is the Super Bowl. That's what I look forward to the most. And archery is just, it gets me in the woods longer.
Amen to that. Totally agree.
Now I have a quick question. I drive a 50cc scooter. If you and I were driving on the same road in opposite directions and passed one another, would you wave at me, Dustin?
Tim, I appreciate that question, and my answer is yes. I wave indiscriminately to all people on two wheels.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Hey, Dustin, next question for you. What is your biggest pet peeve?
I think about that, and I'm not a person that really has pet peeves, but when people say it's their pet peeve, I fail to relate with them sometimes. But it's like, it's almost like your pet peeve is my pet peeve. But if I was really honest and I thought on it, it's people who bite their nails. I never have. I don't get it, and to me it's just this foreign concept. And the noise that somebody biting their nails makes is one of those things I'm like, I do have pet peeves. I do have something that rubs me that wrong way.
So you actually use nail clippers to trim your nails, huh?
I do. I have it in my laptop bag, and it has been in that bag for 5 years, and I haven't lost it yet.
That is impressive. As a fellow nail biter, I mean, I guess I'm not a fellow to you, but as a nail biter, I won't be too offended by that. I learned it from my mother and passed it down to my children, so here we are. What's a favorite author, speaker, podcaster of yours? You mentioned John MacArthur, so maybe you want to share a little bit more about that, or if there are other influences that way for you.
I've always enjoyed listening to Carey Neowolf and his leadership podcast. It seems to have a good perspective and questions and process, and I've really enjoyed over the years. He's been doing it for quite a while. I'm picking up on Paul Tripp recently, and just really enjoying his work, whether it's sermon series or books or podcasts. But I also got to throw Andy Stanley in there. He's near and dear to my heart. Enjoy listening to him. And my wife claims I have a man crush on Dave Ramsey because it seems like I just can't get enough of Dave whenever it's on the radio.
That's good. Yeah, Dave Ramsey's versatile too, because it's not just money; it's entree leadership too. So I appreciate the range there. Paul Tripp was the one who, in his Dangerous Calling book, told me that pastors were allowed to have friends in their church, and that was life-changing for me. And so those kind of things that you run across in books, you really appreciate them and are happy to share them. So I'm glad we have some authors in common. I can't figure out, though, in his books what his emojis mean a lot of times. You know what I'm talking about? Have you read Lead?
I have that on my desk right now. And I've tried to use the emojis to summarize chapters so I can remember what was in what chapter, and I haven't figured them out either.
Yeah, or I guess technically they're probably more icons, but I'm like, these do not make sense to me. Anyway,
Yep.
If you had to choose a different career, Dustin, tomorrow, what do you think it would be?
Well, my dad's an insurance agent, so I could slide right into Godshall Family Insurance, I'm sure, or the Godshall Insurance Agency. However, my wife also claims, I don't know why, she's always said that she thinks that I could have been a good pharmacist.
Oh, interesting. And has she told you why?
I'm not quite sure. She hasn't explained the why to it, but she just said, you're really smart and you like helping people. I think you could be a pharmacist.
Very interesting. I think you need to have a follow-up conversation with your wife and dig a little more deeply into that. And actually, I want to talk with you as a married man and someone who does ministry with his wife. You want to make sure that your married life doesn't blend too much into career life. And so keeping your marriage strong, there's got to be ways you do that where you're not just talking about church all the time, or the kids all the time. What are things you and Kelly do to keep your marriage strong?
Sure. One of our things that helps both of us would be our vacations each year to the beach. Kelly needs beach therapy, and I enjoy surf fishing as well as we're at the beach, and the resting the time away. And we've always been blessed to be able to have vacations every year, and so it's been a great thing. I think a purposeful day off, when we as pastors get our day off, if I let that day get wasted, squandered, or stolen, it begins to impact Kelly and I. So one of the places we'd like to go is a small little French pastry coffee shop in York called Copper Crust, and it's just a great anyway, that's the pizza place.
Well, they're not the sponsors of this podcast, so if you get the name wrong, it's okay.
That's right. it's a great little place. And, it's those times kids are in school, it's a day off. We get a moment to share, whether it's a souffle or a crescent or something French and a good cup of coffee. It's making sure we make that time throughout the week intentionally, just to, be able to sit there, look at each other, talk about life and, things that are going on. And, to be able to pause, pull out the busyness is something that's really important for us.
Yeah. And you mentioned all your kids are teenagers. It's amazing how much time you can spend with your wife, with your family, and not actually look in their faces. And so the very fact that you said, like, sit with each other and look at each other, I think there's something powerful in that eye-to-eye contact where that's the goal.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Intentionally putting the cell phones down or leaving them in the car as well. I'm a little quicker to try to leave it in the car, put it down. But that's another important piece, I think, when we spend time together.
Good. We're gonna start asking you some questions about your ministry now. We're gonna transition into that topic.
Dustin, we all in our ministry journeys have some chapters that maybe we don't really want to revisit those chapters again, and there's some that just great parts of the journey. And so I've loved hearing some of your personal questions. It tells us a lot about your character and your family. Share with us, so we can kind of piece some things together, your key chapters in your ministry journey.
Sure. I did. I was able to participate in Operation Barnabas when I was 17 years old, and I was in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. There was a place called Grace House. It was a ministry to people with AIDS that was in a urban setting in Harrisburg, and it was an experience. 17 years old, just seeing all the students and the impact that I was having in Operation Barnabas. I really felt called to youth ministry, and so that was one of the points I look back on and reflect on, saying, I think that's when I said I want to pursue this and see it happen. I was blessed to receive the full ride scholarship that used to be given away at youth conference, and God provided for education opportunity at Grace College. First week there, a guy took me out to lunch named Brad Skiles and said, "We would like you to lead our youth ministry." And that was a church called New Horizon at the time. That was probably down to 30 people, going through some restart phase. And so I didn't know what I didn't know. And I said, absolutely, I'd love to start in that way. And so I was a youth leader at New Horizon for the 4 years that I was at Grace College and as a student. And man, I had a lot of opportunities to learn, to grow, apply what I was learning in the real world, and to realize how much I needed to learn to be better equipped to do ministry in that way. Following my time there, I was able to go to Grace Church in Powell, Ohio, and I was brought on as a 1-year intern. And so in that opportunity, there were 7 full-time guys. Rick Newsom was the lead pastor at the time, and I got to spend a week with each of the pastors my first 7 weeks and shadow them and watch them and ask them questions and go with them. And then they greatly trusted me as a young man and put me in a position to serve, and worked with middle school students for 8 years. So 6th to 8th grade, we had 80 to 90 students and their parents, and got to be a part of that ministry, and I thoroughly loved it. I enjoyed it, and give me all the middle schoolers you got. That was who God made me to be at that time period. And so 8 years in, the church had sent the family pastor to plant a church. His name was Sean Spolstra, and they asked if I would transition into the family ministry role at Grace Powell. And so opportunity to kind of work with the team from birth to 5th grade, and I learned a lot about administration, organization, volunteers, calendar planning, all those wonderful things you got to do when you have lots and lots of people and sit in a position that has just so many kids being a part of it. So that was fun. Growing in skills and experience, it really felt called to teach, preach, and lead. And I was sitting down with Tom Avey at a Panera in Powell, Ohio, and he asked me, what do you see yourself doing? And I said, I really want to teach, preach, and lead. And he said, have you considered the York Church? And I knew nothing about York. I didn't know anybody at York. And I said, tell me more. And that was how the connection was made, as Pastor Dan White was retiring. And I was able to be a part of the process, applying for the job and interviewing, and ultimately being called to be the lead pastor here back in 2014.
I love how this is a podcast that's dedicated to Charis pastors, and just in you sharing your story, you mention Operation Barnabas, which is this traveling ministry that's in partnership with the Charis Fellowship, now called Momentum Ministry Teams. You mentioned Youth Conference, you mentioned Grace College, and then you named several different people. That is one of the purposes of the More of Us podcast, is to see how many of us in our leadership journey, our chapters are deeply affected by these different people and churches and organizations. So you have illustrated that in a wonderful way, Dustin. And one of the things that you said a couple times in there that's a beautiful theme, in addition to opportunities people gave you, you said, I learned. And I love that learning mentality that you've taken on your leadership journey. I think that's powerful. And hopefully people who are listening want to be continuous learners.
Dustin, one thing that you said is you worked with middle schoolers for what, did you say 8 years?
That's correct. Yep.
Brother, I'm telling you what, you need the crown of your reward right now. I coach middle school football, and I enjoy doing it, but that's a squirrely age, Dustin. How did you survive that? You mentioned that you love that age. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think what I saw, what gave me some of the passion to do it is you got kids coming and they're shifting from concrete thinkers to abstract thinkers, and you're seeing them shift in their understanding of who God is, and being able to ask questions and to learn and to really have fun, kind of teaching them again about what the Bible says, but now this time taking it to a different level, and to see the connection happen and the light come on. And I also really see middle schoolers, again, this was early 2000s, and they're at the crossroads of life, and in a lot of ways, identity, what do they believe about themselves, who do they view themselves to be, where are they going to go in life. And so it really gave me the opportunity to talk to these kids before they got hit with some big questions and big decisions, and try to lay a groundwork for them and to disciple and walk beside them in that way. So for me as a teacher, communicator, I got joy out of teaching those kids on Sunday and on Wednesdays, and the opportunities to be part of FCA, Fellowship for Christian Athletes, in the local schools. I got to speak at Worthington Christian. The school is 8 miles away from the Powell campus, the Worthington campus was. And but I will be honest here and admit I was a chapel speaker there many times, but they asked me to be a small group leader. And I spent probably 2 hours in a room with 10 middle school boys, and at the end of that 2 hour block, I was ready. I was questioning if I should become a pharmacist or not. I was like, oh my goodness, these middle school teachers have it so much harder than middle school pastors, because we get them in for the fun events, for the evening events, for discipleship opportunities. But man, teachers, I don't know if I could have been a middle school teacher 8 hours a day with middle schoolers for 8 years. So I do have my limit.
Hey, just to kind of segue, and I certainly hear your heart on that, and there's days in coaching I feel the same way. What 2 or 3 things that from your Powell experience prepared you for your lead role at York? Could you talk to that just a little bit?
Sure. I think relationship would be one of the big words. I had the privilege to start my ministry in a safe environment with a safe staff, with a lead pastor who invested in his staff and in his team. I knew when I was at college, I remember hearing President Ron Manahan say that he thinks that where people start in ministry oftentimes will be a direct impact where they finish their ministry. You start in a safe environment, in a safe church, in a healthy church, your longevity in ministry is going to be longer than somebody that starts in a church that doesn't have that relational feel or the safety or the teamwork there. And I would attribute Rick Newsom's years in the NFL. He understood team, he understood position, he understood, one of the things in staff meetings, he was clear, we have freedom to say whatever we need to say in a staff meeting, but when we walk out the door of that room, we're united, we're together, and we're moving forward. Just like a locker room experience might be on a game day. And so he modeled that, and he was a transparent leader. He was a humble leader. He was very gracious. I value that. One of the check-in questions that I had with him when I met was, have you gone on a date with your wife? How's the marriage? How's the home? How are the kids? And we always started at that level. We didn't start at, how many kids are coming to youth group and how many decisions and how many baptisms. And, it really was on how you're doing and where you're at. I got to see conflict handled in a healthy way as well, where we would come together, and there was one of the pastors, his sign was his ears in the back of his neck got red as a lobster when he was frustrated. And, through the frustration, disagreement, pushback, we would always leave the room united together as we left, those meeting rooms. And so I was really thankful for a healthy place, for a safe place, for a relational spot that really helped me grow and helped me be able to say, what I didn't know or what I wanted to learn, or, Rick's commitment was to see me become the man that God has made me to be. And so he was the first person I talked to when it was time to make a transition and say, I'm looking for a lead role. I confided, and not a lot of associate or youth pastors have that relationship with their boss that they're able to, share openly and talk about it. It's almost something that's done in secret, or you're not safe enough to let somebody know that you're feeling God call in a different way. And so I really credit my time at PAL. I'm just really thankful for Rick, allowing me to speak as a young man and from a stage to a church of 700-800 people. Just giving me opportunity after opportunity and investing in me and walking beside me in that way. And so I've wanted to create that same environment here at York as we grow and as God uses us. I want to have a healthy culture. I want to be a church where the team is a team, and we're able to see, the experience I had be duplicated here.
That's great, Dustin. We love to hear that senior pastors are pastoring their staff and creating that kind of culture. And for any senior pastor out there who's listening to this, or lead pastor out there listening to this, that's a good culture that you want to create. Openness behind the scenes and unity in front of people. I'm sure there have been things, though, since you've come to York that you realized maybe I wasn't prepared for this yet, but because you're a learner, you've braved it. So what would be something you weren't prepared for in a lead role?
Sure. I remember I pull into the parking lot of the church, look at the building, and sit in my car and think, okay, I have to go and lock the door, turn on the lights, and sit down at my desk and try to figure out what the sermon's going to be about this week, or what we're going to do, where we're going. It was being alone was quite an adjustment, and going into an empty building all by myself was an adjustment. And I had been around team and around people in such ways that it was the challenge was like, what am I doing? It was that piece of the puzzle, like, man, I'm used to being a part of a team and with people. And that was an adjustment period for the first year or two here, until we were able to keep growing into having more teams and more people being a part of what we're doing. And the other part too, I was probably sheltered from some of the drama and some of the back and forth and some of the strong opinions that people can have. And we were in a church that had strong unity, but I realized Rick was probably filtering through things and steering the ship in that way. That now, as a lead pastor, it's like, okay, as we move forward, trying to keep people connected and united and keeping the common vision. And, it's one of the things where you just got to be like a kindergarten teacher and repeat the same thing day after day after day to just keep that common vision to be built and to see, everybody understand the why of where we're going and what's happening.
Yeah, I do think leadership does have lots of repetition as you're trying to cast vision or help people understand the values that you want to undergird your church. So what are some things that people at York or Thrive Church have heard you say over and over and over again?
Sure. Working through, who we are and trying to develop an identity that speaks to where we're going, while we also understand, where we're coming from. We say we are imperfect people being changed by God. And so it's something that I start making the statement on Sunday morning, and the congregation finishes it. And we quickly say, if you're a perfect person, this isn't a church for you. And we encourage you to find a church for perfect people, because our church is imperfect people who are being changed by God. And so that mantra has stuck almost since the first year in, and
Okay.
people repeat it, own it, and share it with their friends when they gather people and say, "Hey, come with me to thrive. We're imperfect people being changed by God." And so it's been fun to see people saying it like it's their idea rather than just parroting back something that they've been told. We'll also say healthy things grow, and growing things are healthy. And so as a church, we have we want to see some dashboard metrics that show, hey, we're seeing new decisions, we're seeing new faces, we're seeing guests, we're seeing baptisms that are happening, we're seeing more people serve, we're seeing more people, connect with the vision of who we are. And so, that's another piece that we put out there is like healthy things grow and growing things are healthy. And we try to keep that the emphasis on health. This is really about trying to be a healthy church where God's getting the glory, and we're imperfect people who are being changed by God. And in turn, he's doing a work here.
Yeah. I talked with you a couple weeks ago at Fellowship Council meetings, and one of the things I heard you say once or twice, which is probably something you repeat too, at least with your staff, but maybe broader than that, we're looking for names, not numbers. People are names, not numbers. So even with those dashboard metrics that you're talking about, those are names, not numbers. And I think that's a really good distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're at a defining crossroad where we say, hey, we're shooting for large church quality with a small church feel, and we're a name, not a number. We think church happens best at 200 and down. So that's not trying to slam the bigger churches. I was a part of one. I was there. But intentionality, how can we continue to keep it feeling like we're in a spot where we're able to spread our spiritual DNA and send campuses out into the county of York to reach people we're not reaching, and to see that be something that's happening here. And that's the story we're asking God to tell.
That's great.
Hey, Dustin, keeping in the mindset of analytics of church, could you describe some significant church growth stages at Thrive and maybe some of the obstacles you face, and how did you overcome those?
Yeah, I think, coming into the church, Ed Short, who's a consultant coach with Assist Church Expansion, he's here in York County, just down the street from me. And so he had helped the church walk through how to find a next pastor and how to, work on that. Ed was telling me, hey, you got to show the church you love them before you can lead them. And I was young and energetic, and I was ready to start, really casting vision and telling people where we're going and what's going to happen. And I realized that the church needs to know that this new pastor loves them. This new pastor cares for them. This new pastor is there, and pastoring is shepherding, it's caring, it's walking beside. And so I probably had to slow down a little bit and love more, and then shift into the lead after the congregation kind of got that, hey, he cares about us. I saw this as a church shift. 38 people voted when I came, and in that time period, we've probably lost a lot of those people, and I've done funerals for them in the last 8 years. And so it was a little bit older of a church, didn't really have a cross section of teenage families, and just a handful, 10 or less kids that were part of our kids ministry. And I saw it as a church where we were at a point we had to kind of recover to get to a healthy church point where there was good health within the church, rather than a church that had been through transition and struggling with identity, and losing people as they were transitioning to other churches. And so we had to form that identity to become a healthy church. And then we went from being a healthy church to a growing church, where we saw new people start to come and connect and buy in and be a part of who we were. And that's a change. When your focus is let's just be a healthy church, and then it moves to let's be a growing church, it does impact what you do and how you think, and your strategy, and how things roll out. And one of the things we said, we have to outgrow our problems. In some way we were casting vision and direction and ideas, and where are the volunteers going to come from? Where's the money going to come from for this budget that we dreamed up? Where are all of these things? And it's like, well, we have to grow into it. We're growing forward, and being able to cast that vision of, as a growing church, here's what happens, and here's what we're looking to see take place. And so I think those were some of the identity parts. We were able to hire associate pastor in 2019, and then COVID hit. It was December 2019. BJ Bowes came on board, and then COVID shut everything down just a couple months later, and we were able to weather the storm. And finally, now I think we're getting back to the point that we were in 2019 as far as what our Sunday mornings look like and where we're at. And there's patience in that. You can't rush a stage. You can't rush a phase. You have to live in that spot and in that moment and be as healthy as you can. And then also have a vision for where you're going next when we see that next part of the story unfold.
What would you say your current stage is and a current obstacle right now?
Well, I said we want to be a church under 200, and our current stage is we are right at the 200 barrier. And many of my pastor friends are telling me that's no man land, because you are either smaller than 200 or bigger than 200. And so we are really at that point of we have a full room. We're maxing out capacity. There's energy. There's excitement. The worship feels great in the sense that there's just a lot of people in there. And we go to 2 services, you cut everything in half, and it's tough. You lose that momentum and that energy. But we're also at a point where we have to implement new systems and structures to the size of small church versus a medium-sized church. And our church was built and understands the small church model, and we're straining at the systems, to be able to grow bigger. And so we're bringing in, how do we care better for people? How do we build a stronger care team where everybody's getting cared for in this number? Because one pastor, even 2 pastors, can't care for everybody. How do we streamline our elder meetings? We're getting log jammed with just strategy, ideas, direction, shepherding, praying for struggling people. Like, it was all the things the elders were trying to do, and we had to kind of simplify what our oversight team did and build a strategic leadership team. And we borrowed the 14 model from Assist Church Expansion. The Bryant brothers do a great job explaining that, and coached us through how do we change our leadership structure to build better teams and stronger teams. And it takes a lot of energy to see that shift happen, to cast the vision and to build it. But I think we're starting to see the fruit of you lay that foundation for the next expansion piece, and you get the right people in the right spots, and the church does amazing things.
Growth problems are certainly problems, but in the big picture of things, they're good problems that we have to think through. So kudos to you for using strategy and getting good advice, Dustin. This next question is dear to Tim and I's heart, and we were sharing a little bit before the podcast started. And from your advice and perspective and experience, what advice would you give to other pastors whose wife is on staff with them?
Sure. And that's a great question. And it's a question that we kind of, Kelly and I found ourselves in a spot where she was the number 1, number 2 to our children's ministry. And we had a great children's director who was doing a great job. She had twins, and as twins hit, she had to step down over the pregnancy and for a year or 2 of time. And so Kelly stepped into the number 1 role to keep that moving. And then through life and just some very tragic loss, our children's director said, "Hey, I'm not coming back." And so Kelly said, "Well, here I am. I'm filling the spot as the number 1, number 2, and I'm gonna keep running with it." And so I probably the last 4 years she's been our part-time children's director here. And so it's one of those things where it's for me, there's like, okay, so how do we talk about work when we're at work, and how do we not talk about work at 11:30 at night when I'm trying to go to sleep and she can't sleep because she's worried and thinking about the the volunteer shortage and what's going to happen and the change that's coming. And she wants to talk about things that's keeping her up and making her nervous. And I've turned off the think about work right now switch in my mind, and I'm ready to go to bed. And, so we joke about those things, like how do we try to keep things in the staff meeting world on Monday mornings is when we do our staff meetings here. And how do we talk about the work stuff at work time and not let it spread. But when you care about the person and when they care about what they're doing, it is your life. It is your it spreads everywhere. So when you get the 9:30 Saturday night text that somebody's sick and can't come, and that's the second or third volunteer to say, "Hey, I can't be there on Sunday morning," and that strain is on my wife's shoulders. You see it, you know about it, and you talk through it. But I think eventually trying to identify, hey, if there's stressors or strains of things that, like, hey, if we're talking about church too much, that's one of our, when we go out together on our day off, we do our best to not talk about church while we're drinking that cup of coffee, while we're getting time away. And, being able to say, hey, and I might come home from a meeting and she might be, honey, that is great, but I'm, finishing a movie right now. I don't want to hear about that, meeting and what happened and what took place. So 20 years into it, we've kind of learned when to talk church, when to talk work, and also when to not talk about it, and when to purposely say, hey, for the next hour, let's not bring up church at all. Let's not talk about anyone from church at all. Let's just be about us. And so, really trying to guard those things and be aware of it will drain you. Your battery will run down if you don't find time to recharge. And so, as she's been on staff, it's something that we try to be aware of. We try to recognize. We try to talk about it. Sometimes I'll say, do you want, is this husband Dustin talking, or is it Pastor Dustin talking, or is this children's director Kelly or wife Kelly? And, be able to clarify, hey, who's talking right now, and what do you want me to do? And also be able to say, I don't want to talk about that right now. As far that's work, let's keep it at work. And trying to understand each other better and do that. Our dream is to, as we grow, is to see a close to full-time children's director be one of our next hires. That if God is showing us the path forward. And that's one of the things where it's like, well, it's probably not Kelly, because recognizing limitations. She's part-time, and that's all she really wanted to do and wanted to be a part of. And so, in the staff role, are you recognizing limitations? Do you know what they want to do, what they don't want to do, and are you guarding, making sure that there's health? Because if your wife is unhealthy at work, she's unhealthy at home, or if your wife is unhealthy at home, she's unhealthy at work. And so, vice versa for me as a pastor too. So, I think you have to be very sensitive to health. You have to be very open about communication, and you have to be willing to, ask hard questions and say, why are we frustrated right now? Is there something I'm doing? Is there something we're not talking about? And, being very aware and being able to have open communication.
That's good advice there. It makes me think that maybe every pastor and wife who both are on staff at a church should have like a hat or a name badge or a clerical robe that they wear when they're in that mode. So then when they get home, they just put the apron on or something. Like, let's make it clear, people. But you did touch on this. I mean, ministry, life, it all blends together, and it's very easy for us to get our identity from what we do. And I think this is a good question for any pastor as we talk about your walk with Jesus. How do you keep, Dustin, pastoral ministry from becoming your identity?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And for me, one of the things we've been grateful for in the transition to York, we've been able to have friends that don't go to our church that live in our community. We've been able to have a couple that their kids mirror our kids' age, and we're able to hang out with them, or go out, or go to sporting events to cheer on our kids together. And it's like I don't have to wear the pastor hat, and I'm not their pastor. I'm their friend, and they're my friend. And the funny thing is, with my buddy, his dad was a pastor, so he grew up as a pastor's kid, but is working construction now. And so he gets and understands, and at times, he'll ask me, how's it going? And it's a safe place to be able to vent, to talk, to share, but also, he's caring for me. And that friendship with another believer, but not from a church, that you're pastoring has been tremendously healthy and positive for me. Because I think, your friends help you understand, view, think, and process the world around you. And so I've been really thankful to have friends not from church. Our last church at Powell was a big church, and to be honest, church of 800-900 people, I didn't talk to many people that didn't go to our church, and so I think that really, intensifies your identity struggle with all your friends and all the people you'll talk to, and everything you do revolves around your role and your position at that church. You don't have much room for help, to be able to realize that, I'm getting super, super, super tied into one position here. And so that would be how I would answer that first question. I'm thankful for friends that I don't have to pastor and who care and walk beside me.
Nextly, Dustin, kind of in this segue of ministry and healthy ministry. By the way, I love your church name, Thrive. Love that name. What are a few practices that help you hear from Jesus and become more like him? And I think that's one of the most important questions we can ask you.
Yeah, and again, as I thought through, when I look for rhythms in life, for time and place, and when I make sure this rhythm happens, it impacts my health, and when I begin to feel like why am I worn out or burned out? I lost the rhythm. One of those things for me is driving to and from work uh, without the radio, either one way or the other. And it's that time where it's quiet, it's still, and I'm by myself as I drive. And it's time for me to pray and ponder. If I ever get my morning reading in, and really I've learned I'm an auditory learner, so I love to listen, whether it's through the Bible app reading me the passage, whether it's an audio book or whether it's podcast. I'm chewing on stuff through listening, but to find time to be still and quiet as I drive, and to be able to pray and almost let the Spirit lead in that, like what God brings to mind, whether it's a relationship, a struggle, a hurt, somebody in the congregation I'm walking beside, but to be able to lift them up, to pray for them. And I use the word ponder there because it's not always me talking to God and telling him everything, but it's time to try to be still. And in that, I almost feel like God does direct lead or give thoughts, or the next time you have a conversation with a person, talk about this. And it's almost like I'm getting that, connection with him through that time. And when I go too busy and I'm listening to too much noise and I don't get that quiet time to pray and ponder and to be still, I feel it. Stress goes up, anxiety goes up, unhealth goes up, and I need to make sure I'm circling back to that to be able to give room for that.
I like that idea of pondering and the need for quiet. And I think it's important to distinguish between a spiritual discipline as just something we do and a spiritual discipline as a posture that opens us to the work of God in our lives. And so you clearly identify the Holy Spirit trying to guide you in those moments. And I think that's something in our Charis Fellowship that we can be encouraged by, because we don't often talk about the Spirit freely. There's a little bit, of reluctance in our group, but as we've interviewed different people, several of our interview subjects have brought up the Holy Spirit, listening for the Spirit to prompt us. But it requires stillness on our part. So that's really good. I wanted to ask you about what the Spirit might be growing in you right now as far as a virtue, a fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah, it's funny, as I looked at that question and as I sang the Fruit of the Spirit song in my head.
You want to sing it for us now?
Not being a coconut or a cherry. As I went through it, I did realize, processing through Ecclesiastes, we read that January 1st was a Sunday, and we did have church, and we just let people read a chapter at a time, and we infused a couple songs and a little devotional thought. But the book of Ecclesiastes was the topic, and it was great. People left with a powerful thought or an impact, or God really used something in that book to hit them. And for me, I got to spend a little more time in the book. I saw that the object that you draw your joy from is what identifies you the most. Like if we love football, if we love a certain team in football, and like we draw our joy, if they win the game, we're excited. If they lose, we're devastated, and we want to fire the coach and everybody else. And you look through like what you draw your joy from. If it's a relationship or a person or a thing or an object or a car. If that's what gives you your joy, that's what gets your time, your attention, and I realized, I think in my life, I need to draw joy from God. I need to draw joy from serving God. I need to ask God, God, will you give me the joy of doing ministry? Will you give me the joy of being obedient to you? Will you give me the joy? And that joy is almost like that battery inside that gives you the energy to keep going. I just need one or two wins. I can face a world of discouragement if I see one or two wins. I draw joy from that. And I've been intentional to coach. I lead our college group, 18 to 28-year-old kids on Sunday nights at our church. And I've been really hounding them in a way to say, like, guys, you need to draw your joy from a relationship with God. Because so many times we tell people, be obedient, don't do bad things, don't sin, don't be, impacted by the world. But we're not telling them you can find joy in your relationship with God. Do everything as you do as unto the Lord. Draw joy from it. God, I'm doing this for you. God, I'm serving you in this way. And really look for, how do I draw joy from my relationship with God? And so, hitting that question, I was like, oh, joy. That's been pretty key in January and February in our Bible studies. I think God's been impressing that on me, is like, as you disciple and as you lead, make sure you connect people to finding joy in serving God.
Dustin, one thing that I learned as a pastor as I was getting ready to present a message and preach to my congregation, the Lord would have me live what I was going to preach first. Mm-hmm. So how has your current sermon series, Rewired, helped you as a disciple?
Yeah, it's been a gut check of a book. The book was by David Bowden. He spoke at the Momentum Youth Conference, and our associate pastor BJ was there with students, and he came back and he said, man, this is what we need to dig in. And so we started 2023 with a series coming from that book as we try to understand, the importance of the heart. And so for me, it was just that work to say, a lot of times we see the fruit on the tree, and the fruit on the tree is symptomatic of the root of the tree, and it's where the roots of the tree go. And so sin is on our hands because it's in our heart. And rather than just being frustrated or upset at times where I fall short, I'm aware of my sin or struggle, or it's saying that's heart work that has to happen there. And so preaching that to myself and taking the time to rather than just look at the fruit, I've had to really recognize, man, this is a heart issue in my own life, and I need to surrender it to God, and I need to get honest about it, and I need to move forward with it, and to kind of track with the Rewired book. It's where we've been preaching from, and biblically drawing on these passages about how do you change your heart to see the fruit change and to shift into that.
Good. Thank you, Dustin. We're so happy to have the time with you just to hear about your ministry journey, your family, your walk with Jesus. I do like to close out with this question every time, and just because I think we serve a living God, the risen Jesus, who still wants to speak encouragement to us. So what's something that you need to hear regularly from Jesus at your current season of life?
Yeah, I think as we look at growth and change and where we're at in the changing world of COVID to just the craziness all around our culture, it really comes down to John 15. I am the vine, you are the branch. Remain in me, and I in you, and you'll bear much fruit. And the word remain, to dwell, to abide, to recognize. As much as agriculture world is, it's an organic process. It's you can't force something, you can't push, you can't create. There's just something to abiding, remaining, to dwelling, and it's that connection to God that's where the fruit comes from. And so that's been a key thought. Like success and growth, if it's man-centered, which can make churches grow, it's not going to result in the spiritual fruit that God wants to be there. But when you focus on the spiritual fruit, I think church growth happens because it's organic and it's God doing what only God can do.
Well, good. I hope that you have a nice weekend of abiding in Christ and knowing that we abide in his love, we are his friends, and that he gave himself for us so that we can be part of his harvest. It's good to talk with you today, and thanks for sharing with us.
Dustin, what a pleasure to get to meet you today. I love hearing your story and how your church, Thrive, is thriving in ministry. This is Dr. Lambert from the Charis Collective, which is part of the Center of Thriving Leaders of Grace College and Seminary, along with Pastor Tim Sprankle of Leesburg Grace Church. Thanks for joining us today on More of Us, and we hope that you listen again soon. Blessings to you.